My jealous cousin slapped me at the courthouse gate, grabbed me by the neck, and spat, "Filthy animal, family disgrace." My dad just stood there, saying nothing. 5 minutes later, my cousin's face went pale when he saw me sitting in the judge's chair. Can you imagine being slapped across the face, called a filthy animal by your own cousin, while your own father just stands there, watching? That happened to me. What they didn't know is that just 5 minutes later, I'd be the one sitting on the judge's bench. My name is Shannon, and that day I became the youngest judge in our county's history. But honestly, my family barely even registered it. My whole life, it felt like I was invisible to my father, and my cousin, Alicia, was always trying to outshine me. My journey to that bench? It was a lonely one. I just never thought my professional triumph would crash into my family drama in such a public, shocking way. You see, I grew up in this tiny town in Connecticut where everyone knew everyone's business. My dad, Thomas Walker, he was a big deal there, owned properties downtown, involved in community causes. People saw him as successful, generous. What they didn't see was the ice at home. He was so emotionally distant, especially with me. My mom, Elizabeth, she was my buffer, my champion. She was the one who celebrated my wins, who tried to bridge that chasm between my dad's cold expectations and my desperate need for his approval. But then, when I was just 12, she got sick. Cancer. And she was gone. Just like that. Our home, which had always been a little chilly, became a frozen tomb of unspoken words and missed connections. After Mom died, the contrast between how my dad treated me and Alicia, it was impossible to ignore. Alicia was my Aunt Patricia's daughter, lived just 3 blocks away, and she was always at our house. She was only 2 years older than me, but somehow, she'd carved out this special place in my dad's heart that I could never touch. "Shannon, why can't you be more like your cousin?" That became the soundtrack of my teenage years. Alicia was the life of the party, charismatic, always had a joke that made my dad roar with laughter. Me? I was the quiet one, the bookworm. What my dad never seemed to notice was that while Alicia was charming, her grades were, well, mediocre at best. Meanwhile, I was getting a perfect GPA, joining every academic club I could find. My 8th grade science project won the state competition, even got me a feature in the local newspaper. My dad? He barely even glanced at the article. 2 weeks later, when Alicia made the junior varsity cheerleading squad, he took the entire family out to the nicest restaurant in town to celebrate. "Your cousin knows how to be a team player," he told me that night, like it was some profound truth. "That will take her further in life than any science award." As we got older, Alicia's jealousy started showing. She'd make these cutting remarks about my boring focus on academics. Once, she accidentally spilled soda all over my study notes the night before a huge exam. Another time, she told a boy I liked that I'd said terrible things about him, which was a complete lie. These small cruelties, they piled up. And my dad? He never, ever intervened. The most painful incident, though, happened in high school. We had to write an original short story for English class. I poured my heart into mine, weeks of work, a story about a girl finding her voice after losing her mother. Somehow, Alicia got onto my computer, found my draft, copied huge chunks, tweaked them a little, and submitted it as her own. 2 days before the deadline. I was devastated. I confronted her privately first. "What does it matter?" she shrugged. "You always get good grades anyway." I needed this win. I went to our teacher, showed her both versions. Given our academic histories, she believed me. Alicia got a failing grade. And that sparked a huge family drama. My aunt called my dad, absolutely furious that I'd humiliated her daughter. And my dad? Instead of defending me, he grounded me. "Family comes first, Shannon," he lectured. "You could have just written another story." I cried myself to sleep that night, feeling utterly, completely alone. The next morning, I went to school early and found myself wandering into my career counselor's office. Mrs. Taylor, she saw my red eyes and invited me to sit down. We talked for over an hour. It was the first time I ever said out loud that I wanted to become a lawyer. "I want to fight for what's right," I told her. "I want to be in a place where the truth matters." Mrs. Taylor connected me with a local attorney, Janet Reeves, who let me shadow her. Judge Reeves became my first mentor. She showed me that women could succeed in law with intelligence and integrity. She also taught me something critical. I didn't need my father's approval to chase my dreams. When I finally told my dad about pre-law in college, he dismissed it immediately. Lawyers are a dime a dozen, Shannon. That's unrealistic dreaming. You should focus on something practical, like business administration. You could work for me someday. His words stung, but they also forged something stronger inside me. I applied to colleges with top pre-law programs, secured scholarships, financial aid, and prepared to leave home for good. College was both liberating and terrifying. Liberating because I was finally free from my father's disapproving glances and Alicia's constant sabotage. Terrifying because I was entirely on my own financially. While my classmates got support from their parents, I worked 3 part-time jobs just to get by: library assistant, waitress, tutoring gigs. Sleep became a luxury. But I was determined to succeed without ever asking my father for help. Despite the crazy schedule, I maintained a 3.9 GPA and snagged an internship at the district attorney's office. When I called home to share the news, my dad sounded distracted. "That's nice, Shannon. Did you hear Alicia got promoted at the mall? She's an assistant manager now." Every conversation was the same. My achievements minimized. Alicia's ordinary life celebrated. Eventually, I just stopped calling as much. He rarely called me. Meanwhile, Alicia dropped out of community college after 1 semester, claiming it wasn't for her. Didn't affect her standing one bit. My aunt and my dad kept praising her street smarts and people skills, showering her with emotional and financial support. Alicia needed a car? Dad co-signed the loan. I needed new winter boots because mine had holes? He suggested I budget better. The contrast was painful, but it pushed me to build my own support network. I made incredible friends, especially Julia, who became the sister I never had. Julia was the first person I told when I got into 3 law schools, one with a full scholarship. She celebrated with me, buying champagne she probably couldn't afford. When I called my dad with the news, he sounded almost annoyed. "Law school? That's at least 3 more years of not earning a real income, Shannon. Are you sure about this?" I sent letters home occasionally during my first year of law school, sharing stories. Most went unanswered. The few replies were brief, impersonal, always with updates about Alicia I hadn't asked for. During winter break of my 2nd year, I decided to go home for Christmas, hoping time and distance had softened things. Julia urged caution. "Don't expect too much," she warned. "People don't change overnight." She was right. The holiday gathering at my aunt's house was a disaster. Alicia, now 25 and a salon receptionist, dominated the conversation with exaggerated tales about celebrity clients. When relatives asked about my studies, Alicia quickly jumped in with a dramatic story about a customer who supposedly left her a $100 tip. Later, I overheard her talking to our cousin William. "Shannon thinks she's so special with her fancy law school," she sneered. "But did you know she had to take out massive loans? She'll be in debt forever. Plus, I heard she's barely passing her classes." Neither was true. My scholarship covered most of my tuition, and I was in the top 10% of my class. When I confronted her, she laughed it off as just a joke, but the damage was done. William looked at me differently for the rest of the night. The final straw came when my dad pulled me aside before I left. "Alicia mentioned you've been struggling in school," he said. "You know, there's no shame in coming home and taking a more practical path." I was stunned. "Dad, I'm not struggling. I'm excelling." "Why would you believe her without even asking me?" He just shrugged. "Alicia's always been straightforward. You tend to exaggerate your accomplishments." I left that house that night and checked into a hotel. The next morning, on the long drive back to campus, I made a decision that changed everything. I would create distance. I would build my own path. During my final year of law school, I threw myself into my future. Law review, moot court, a prestigious clerkship after graduation. When professors and colleagues started recognizing my potential as a rising legal talent, I didn't call home to share the news. The gap between us had simply grown too wide for phone calls. I graduated with honors, and Julia was there, cheering louder than anyone. My father and Alicia were noticeably absent. That night, celebrating with Julia and our classmates, I realized I had created a new family. One built on mutual respect and genuine support. My early career as a public defender was tough, but deeply fulfilling. Long hours, modest pay, emotionally draining. But for the first time, I felt exactly where I needed to be. I represented clients who couldn't afford legal counsel, often facing impossible odds. Within 2 years, I had a reputation: thorough, ethical, genuinely caring. Judges noticed. Prosecutors respected my arguments. Senior attorneys started assigning me complex cases. One of those cases brought me to Judge Eleanor Thompson's courtroom. She was formidable, known for her sharp intellect. After watching me successfully argue a difficult motion, she asked me to stay. "You have potential, counselor," she said, peering over her glasses. "Ever considered aiming for the bench someday?" The question caught me completely off guard. The bench? You mean becoming a judge? Yes, that is generally what the bench refers to in legal circles, she replied with dry humor. This county needs more judges who understand what it's like to represent the disadvantaged. That conversation planted a seed. Judge Thompson became a mentor. Under her guidance, I took on cases that broadened my experience and raised my profile. One case involved defending a young woman accused of theft by a prominent business owner. I discovered he'd framed her to cover his own financial misdeeds. The charges were dismissed, the investigation turned on him. It made local headlines. News of my success eventually reached my hometown through mutual acquaintances and local media. I heard from a former high school teacher that Alicia had become increasingly resentful. While I was building a career, she'd cycled through several jobs, never staying anywhere for long. After 5 years of minimal contact, I decided to try reaching out to my father. Time had dulled the sharp edges, and a part of me hoped my accomplishments might finally earn his respect. I called and suggested dinner during an upcoming conference visit to Connecticut. The restaurant was upscale, the conversation awkward. My dad looked older, with new lines etched around his eyes. We made stilted small talk before he, inevitably, steered the conversation to Alicia. "Your cousin has been going through a rough patch," he said, swirling his scotch. "Lost another job last month. Not her fault, of course. The manager had it out for her from day one." I nodded politely. I'd heard variations of that excuse my whole life. "That's unfortunate. What are her plans now?" He sighed. "She's had some legal troubles, too. Nothing serious. A couple of DUIs, a misunderstanding about some merchandise at her last retail job." Translation: Alicia had been caught stealing. The familiar pattern of excuses and minimization was exactly as I remembered. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "If she needs legal advice, I could recommend some good attorneys in the area." My father's expression hardened. "We don't need your charity, Shannon. Alicia will figure things out. She always does." The dinner ended shortly after. It was clear, some relationships cannot be repaired by time alone. We were strangers, connected only by DNA and a painful history. A year later, I was shortlisted for a judicial appointment. At 30, I would be among the youngest judges in the state if selected. The vetting process was rigorous. 2 weeks before the final decision, the committee received an anonymous complaint questioning my character and fitness. It alleged I'd manipulated evidence as a public defender. The accusations were completely false and suspiciously detailed about my personal life. I had little doubt about its source. The timing, the personal details, the attempt to undermine my career? It all pointed to Alicia. Fortunately, my record spoke for itself. Colleagues, even former opponents from the prosecutor's office, vouched for my integrity. Judge Thompson wrote a powerful letter of support. The committee investigated, found the claims baseless, and I was appointed. The experience left me shaken, but even more determined to serve with integrity. The official announcement came on a crisp autumn morning. At 31, I became the youngest judge in our county's history. The local paper ran a front-page story. Judge Thompson was the first to congratulate me, giving me a fountain pen engraved with my initials. "This was given to me when I took the bench 30 years ago," she said. "Use it to sign orders that uphold justice." The courthouse staff held a small celebration. Prosecutors, public defenders, the chief judge, everyone welcomed me to the family. Family. That word triggered a bittersweet pang. My achievement should have been a moment of shared pride with those who knew me longest. Instead, the people who witnessed my childhood were absent. Julia, who'd driven 3 hours to surprise me, noticed my momentary melancholy. "They're missing out, not you," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "We're your family now." She was right, of course. But there's still something about a parent's approval that even the most self-assured adult craves. I had built a life I was proud of, surrounded by people who valued me. Yet, a small part of me still wished my father could see who I had become. 2 days later, my phone rang. A Connecticut area code I immediately recognized. My father. After nearly a year of silence. For a fleeting moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd seen the news. Maybe he was finally calling to acknowledge my success. "Shannon, we need to talk," he said without preamble. His voice sounded strained, almost desperate. "Is everything okay, Dad? Are you ill?" Concern immediately overrode our complicated history. "No, nothing like that. It's Alicia. She's in trouble. Serious trouble this time." Of course. He wasn't calling about my appointment at all. He was calling because Alicia needed something. "What kind of trouble?" I asked, my voice cooling several degrees. "Legal trouble. Fraud charges. Identity theft. They're saying she could face serious time. She needs a good lawyer, Shannon. Someone who knows the system." The irony was almost too much. After years of dismissing my legal career as impractical, my father was now trying to leverage it for Alicia's benefit. "Dad, I'm a judge now. I can't represent Alicia or recommend specific attorneys. It would be an ethical violation." Silence stretched between us, followed by a bitter laugh. "A judge? Since when?" The question confirmed it. He hadn't even bothered to search my name online in years. He had no idea. "Since last week," I replied evenly. "It was in the news." Another long pause. "Well, congratulations," he said finally, the words hollow. "But that doesn't help Alicia's situation. Surely you can make some calls, pull some strings." "That's not how this works. I have ethical obligations now that limit what I can do for family members. The most I can suggest is that Alicia contact the public defender's office if she can't afford private counsel." "So that's it? You're abandoning your family when we need you? After everything we've done for you?" The accusation was so outrageous, I almost laughed. What exactly had they done for me, besides undermine and dismiss me at every turn? "I'm sorry you see it that way, Dad. I truly am. But I can't compromise my professional ethics, even for family." He hung up without saying goodbye. Later that evening, I got a call from Lisa Goldstein, a prosecutor I'd faced in court many times. "Shannon, I'm sorry to bother you at home, but I thought you should know. We filed charges today against an Alicia Walker for fraud and identity theft. Given your last name, I wondered if there might be a relation." "She's my cousin," I admitted. "But I haven't had much contact with her in years." "I see. Well, this is awkward, but part of the case involves her apparently using someone else's personal information to open credit accounts. The victim's name is Shannon Walker." My blood ran cold. "She used my identity." "It appears so. The accounts were opened several years ago using an old address of yours from college. The fraud was only discovered recently when the credit card companies began collection actions. The pieces clicked into place. Years ago, I'd received strange calls from debt collectors. I dismissed them as mistaken identity or scams. Now I knew. Her arraignment is scheduled for next Tuesday in county court," Lisa continued. "Given the personal connection, I wanted to give you a heads up so you can make sure you're not assigned to the case." "Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate the courtesy." After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. Alicia had not only tried to sabotage my career with false accusations, but she'd stolen my identity years earlier. The depth of her resentment was even greater than I'd imagined. I was faced with a difficult decision. As a family member of the victim, I should attend the arraignment to make a statement. As a newly appointed judge, I needed to maintain professional distance. And as someone who'd spent years trying to break free from toxic family dynamics, I questioned whether I should get involved at all. After a sleepless night, I decided to attend. Not as a judge, but as a family member. Despite everything, she was still my cousin. And maybe, just maybe, seeing her face consequences would be the first step toward her taking responsibility. I also hoped being present might open a door to reconciliation with my father, who would surely be there for Alicia. Little did I know, my decision would lead to one of the most humiliating and ultimately transformative moments of my life. Tuesday morning arrived with that perfect autumn weather that usually lifts spirits. Crisp air, golden sunshine, brilliant leaves. I stood in front of my closet, deliberating. I wasn't appearing as a judge today, but I wasn't exactly a regular civilian either. I settled on a conservative navy dress with a tailored jacket, professional, but not overtly judicial. The drive to the courthouse was familiar, but my churning stomach was not. I'd faced countless difficult situations in that building, but nothing had prepared me for seeing my father and Alicia together, especially under these circumstances. I arrived early, partly from habit, partly to compose myself. As I pulled into the judicial parking area, a security officer approached. "Good morning, Judge Walker," he said, with a respectful nod. "I thought you weren't on the docket today. I'm not here in an official capacity, Marcus. Personal matter." His eyes widened slightly, but he was too professional to ask. "Understood, Your Honor. Will you be entering through the judicial entrance?" I shook my head. "No, I'll use the main entrance today. Thank you." Walking around to the public side, I spotted my father near the steps, checking his watch impatiently. He looked older than at our dinner a year ago. Shoulders stooped, hair completely gray. For a moment, watching him unobserved, I felt a pang of something like pity. He looked up and saw me. His expression cycled rapidly through surprise, confusion, and weariness. "Shannon, what are you doing here?" he asked. "Hello, Dad," I said, stopping a few feet away. "I'm here for Alicia's arraignment." His eyes narrowed. "Why? To gloat? To make sure they throw the book at her." The accusation stung, but I kept my voice level. "Despite everything, she's family. And I thought you might need support, too." He seemed taken aback, unable to reconcile my presence with his perception of me as someone who had abandoned family. Before he could respond, a car pulled up sharply to the curb. Alicia emerged, my Aunt Patricia, from the driver's seat. Alicia looked terrible. Her normally perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark roots showing. Her face was puffy, eyes bloodshot. She wore a black pantsuit that hung loosely, suggesting recent weight loss. For a moment, I felt genuine sympathy. That feeling evaporated the instant she spotted me. "What the hell is she doing here?" Alicia demanded, stalking toward us. Her voice was loud enough to attract attention. "Alicia, calm down," my aunt hissed, hurrying after her. "We're at a courthouse." "I don't care. She has no right to be here." Alicia stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell the coffee on her breath. "Come to watch the show, Shannon? Enjoying seeing me at my lowest?" "That's not why I'm here," I said quietly. "I came to support Dad and to see if there's any way I can help." "Help?" Alicia laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "That's rich. You're the reason I'm in this mess." My father stepped between us. "Alicia, this isn't the place. Let's go inside." "No." Alicia pushed past him. "She needs to hear this. You think you're so perfect, don't you, Shannon? Little Miss Perfect with her perfect grades and her perfect job and her perfect life. You've always had everything handed to you." The sheer absurdity of her statement left me speechless. Everything handed to me? I'd worked multiple jobs to put myself through school while she dropped out and still received my father's financial support. "Alicia, I know you're upset, but that's not true. I've worked hard for everything I've achieved." "Worked hard?" Her voice rose to a near shriek. "You sabotaged me. You told the DA about those accounts, didn't you? You've been waiting for a chance to ruin me." "I didn't know about the fraud until last week," I said, struggling to maintain composure. "I had no idea you had used my identity." This admission seemed to push her over the edge. "Liar," she screamed. Then, before anyone could react, she slapped me. Hard. Across the face. The blow was shocking more than painful. The sound cracked through the morning air like a gunshot. People froze. My cheek burned, and I tasted blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my mouth. Before I could recover, Alicia grabbed the collar of my jacket with both hands, momentarily choking me as she pulled me closer to her contorted face. "You filthy animal," she spat, her voice low and venomous now. "You're a disgrace to this family. You think that robe makes you better than us? You're nothing." 2 courthouse security officers were running toward us. My father stood frozen, watching the scene unfold without making any move to intervene. My aunt was pulling ineffectually at Alicia's arm, pleading with her to stop. The security officers separated us. "Is everyone all right?" the first officer asked, looking at me with concern. I recognized him as Officer Ramirez, who regularly worked in my courtroom. "I'm fine," I said, straightening my jacket with shaking hands. "Judge Walker," he asked quietly, "do you want to press charges?" Alicia's eyes widened at the word judge. She looked at me with new understanding and horror. "No charges," I said firmly, "but I would appreciate an escort inside." Officer Ramirez nodded and led me up the steps. As we walked away, I heard Alicia burst into tears behind me. My father still hadn't said a word in my defense. Inside, Officer Ramirez directed me to a small conference room. "Take a minute to compose yourself, Judge. Can I get you some water or coffee?" "Water would be great." "Thank you." When he left, I finally allowed myself to feel the full impact. My hands trembled as I touched my stinging cheek. Tears welled in my eyes, not from pain, but from the public humiliation and the painful confirmation that my father would always choose Alicia over me, even when she was clearly, definitively in the wrong. I had harbored a small hope that attending today might lead to reconciliation. Instead, it had only reinforced what I had known for years, but refused to fully accept. There was no relationship to salvage. In the quiet of that room, surrounded by the legal system I had dedicated my life to, I finally let go of the fantasy that my family would ever see me or value me. The realization was devastating and strangely liberating. I don't know how long I sat there. The shock of the public confrontation left me disoriented. I kept replaying Alicia's attack, the venom in her voice, my father's silent complicity. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. Lisa Goldstein, the prosecutor, poked her head in. "Shannon, are you okay?" I heard there was an incident outside. I managed a weak smile. News travels fast. It's a courthouse. Gossip moves at the speed of light. She sat down, her expression concerned. Security reported what happened. "Are you sure you don't want to file charges?" "I'm sure. It would only escalate the situation." Lisa nodded, then checked her watch with a frown. "Have you seen Kevin Morgan around? He's supposed to be handling arraignments in courtroom C today." "No, I haven't seen him." "Is there a problem?" She sighed. "Judge Reeves was rushed to the hospital this morning. Emergency gallbladder surgery. Kevin was supposed to cover her docket, but he's not answering his phone." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Alicia's arraignment is in courtroom C. Yes, Lisa confirmed, among about 20 other cases. She ran a hand through her hair. "We're trying to find another judge, but everyone's booked solid." Court clerk Barbara Lewis appeared at the door, slightly breathless. "There you are, Lisa. We have a situation." She stopped abruptly when she saw me. "Oh, Judge Walker. Thank goodness. We need your help." "My help?" "Judge Reeves is out for emergency surgery. Judge Morgan is unreachable, and we have a full arraignment docket starting," she checked her watch, "in 15 minutes. You're the only judge in the building who isn't currently in court." "Barbara," I said carefully, "my cousin is on that docket. She's being arraigned for identity theft, using my identity." Barbara's eyes widened. "Oh dear. That is a complication." Lisa interjected, "We could delay the whole docket, but that means 20 people either wait all day or have to come back tomorrow. Some are in custody." I thought quickly. Let me call Chief Judge Hernandez. This requires his guidance. Judge Hernandez picked up on the second ring. I explained everything as concisely as possible, the confrontation outside, my obvious conflict of interest with Alicia's case. I see the dilemma, he said after a moment. Here's what we'll do. You can open court and handle the administrative aspects of starting the session. Explain that you have a conflict with one specific case, and you'll recuse yourself for that matter only. I'll send Judge Patel from my chambers to handle your cousin's arraignment specifically. He was working on opinions today, but can step in for one case. Thank you, sir. That seems like the best solution. One more thing, Shannon, he added before hanging up. Document everything about the incident outside. If your cousin made physical contact with you on courthouse grounds, that's a serious matter, regardless of your familial relationship. Yes, sir. Barbara was waiting anxiously when I hung up. Judge Hernandez says I should proceed with opening court and handle all cases except Alicia's. Judge Patel will come down specifically for that arraignment. Relief washed over her face. Perfect. Thank you, Judge Walker. I'll have your robes brought to the judicial chambers behind courtroom C immediately. 20 minutes later, I was adjusting my robes in the small chamber. My cheeks still showed a faint red mark, but it wasn't immediately noticeable. I had pulled my hair back into a tight bun and put on the judicial face I had practiced, calm, impartial, dignified. When I entered the courtroom through the judge's entrance, the bailiff called out, "All rise. Court is now in session." The Honorable Judge Shannon Walker presiding. As I took my seat at the bench, I scanned the crowded courtroom. My heart nearly stopped when I spotted my father and Alicia in the gallery. Alicia's mouth fell open in shock. My father's face drained of color as he realized who was sitting in the judge's seat. I forced myself to look away from them and focus. Good morning, everyone. We have a full docket today, and I appreciate your patience. Before we begin, I need to make a brief statement. There is one case on today's docket where I have a personal conflict of interest and will be recusing myself. When we reach the matter of State versus Alicia Walker, Judge Patel will temporarily take the bench to handle that arraignment. For all other matters, we will proceed as normal. The court clerk handed me the docket, and I began calling cases. I handled each arraignment with careful attention, explaining charges, confirming rights, addressing bail, setting dates. All the while, I was acutely aware of my father and Alicia watching me. With each case I handled competently and professionally, I could feel the weight of their gaze. For the first time, they were seeing me in my element, respected, authoritative, confident. After nearly an hour, we reached Alicia's case. The court calls State versus Alicia Walker, case number 2024 CR 789. I looked up. As previously stated, I am recusing myself from this matter due to a personal conflict. We will take a brief recess while Judge Patel assumes the bench. I stood and exited through the judge's door, passing Judge Patel in the hallway. Thank you for stepping in, Your Honor. He nodded. No problem, Shannon. Family cases are always complicated. I waited in my chambers while Judge Patel handled Alicia's arraignment. I could hear the muffled sounds of proceedings. I resisted the urge to peek. Whatever happened now was out of my hands. 20 minutes later, there was a knock. Judge Patel entered, already removing his robe. All done, he said. She pleaded not guilty, but her attorney indicated they'll likely be working on a plea agreement. Given the evidence, that's probably wise. Thank you again for stepping in. Of course. He hesitated at the door. By the way, your father asked me where he could find you. I didn't give him any information, but I thought you should know he was asking. My heart skipped a beat. Thank you for the heads up. After Judge Patel left, I returned to the courtroom to finish the remaining cases. Alicia was gone, but my father still sat in the gallery, watching me intently. For the next hour, I focused completely on the cases before me, giving each defendant my full attention. With the final case concluded, I adjourned court and retreated to my chambers. I was hanging up my robe when a knock came at the door. Yes, I called, expecting Barbara. The door opened slowly, and my father stood there, looking uncertain, somehow smaller than I remembered. May I come in? He asked, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I nodded, motioning to the chair across from my desk. For a long moment, we sat in silence. The roles in our relationship had suddenly, dramatically reversed. In this room, I was the authority figure. He was the visitor, seeking audience. My father cleared his throat. So, a judge. Yes. You never told me. I raised an eyebrow. I tried to, Dad. Many times over many years. You were always more interested in Alicia's latest job at the mall. He flinched at the accuracy of that statement. I saw you today in court. You were impressive. Coming from him, it was perhaps the closest thing to praise I had ever received. I didn't know how to respond, so I simply said, thank you. Alicia was released on bail, he continued. Her lawyer thinks she'll get a plea deal. Probation, restitution, community service. That sounds appropriate for a first offense, I said neutrally. Another long silence. Finally, he said what he had clearly come to say. I'm sorry about what happened outside. She shouldn't have done that. No, she shouldn't have. And I should have stopped her or said something. I looked directly at him. Yes, you should have. He held my gaze for a moment, then looked away. I've made a lot of mistakes, Shannon. With you. I see that now. It was an admission I had waited decades to hear, but it felt hollow. Coming only after he had seen me in a position of power. Had I remained a public defender, would this realization ever have come? Why did you always favor her over me? I asked the question that had haunted me since childhood, finally finding its voice. My father sighed heavily. She reminded me of myself. Struggling, making mistakes, needing second chances. You were always so capable, so self-sufficient, like your mother. His voice caught on the last word. After Elizabeth died, looking at you was painful. You have her eyes, her determination. So you punished me for reminding you of Mom, and rewarded Alicia for being a mess. He winced. When you put it that way, it sounds terrible. It was terrible, Dad. It was terrible to grow up feeling like I was doing something wrong by doing everything right. The conversation with my father that day didn't magically repair 20 years of damage. There was no tearful embrace, no instant reconciliation. But it was a beginning. The first honest exchange we'd had since my mother died. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said as he prepared to leave. But I am proud of what you've accomplished, Shannon. Even if I've been terrible at showing it. Thank you for saying that, I replied. It means something to hear it, even now. We agreed to meet for dinner the following month, a small step toward whatever our relationship might become. As he reached the door, he turned back. Your mother would have been so proud of you. She always said you would do remarkable things. After he left, I sat alone in my chambers, letting tears fall freely for the first time that day. They were complicated tears. Grief for the relationship I had never truly had with my father. Relief at the small breakthrough we'd just experienced. And a bittersweet pride in how far I had come, despite everything. The weeks that followed brought significant developments. Alicia accepted a plea deal, full restitution for the money she had fraudulently obtained using my identity, 2 years of probation, and community service. The prosecutor told me that during negotiations, Alicia had expressed genuine remorse, particularly about the courthouse incident. She asked if you would be willing to meet with her, Lisa told me over coffee. Of course, she wants to apologize in person. I considered the request carefully. Not yet. Maybe someday, but I'm not ready for that. My decision to maintain boundaries with Alicia was part of a larger commitment to my own well-being. For too long, I had allowed the hope of family approval to influence my emotions and choices. Now, I was prioritizing my own healing. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Rachel Martinez, who specialized in family trauma. Our weekly sessions helped me process not only the recent dramatic events, but the long-standing patterns that had shaped my life. You've been seeking validation from people who are fundamentally incapable of giving it, she observed during one session. That's not a reflection on your worth, but on their limitations. My support network proved invaluable. Julia visited frequently, bringing home-cooked meals and providing the unconditional friendship that had sustained me for years. My colleagues on the bench checked in regularly. Judge Thompson took me to lunch shortly after news of the courthouse incident had circulated. I heard you handled yourself with remarkable dignity, she said. Not everyone could maintain judicial composure after being assaulted by a family member. I didn't feel very dignified in the moment, I admitted. That's the secret of the robe, she said with a knowing smile. It's not about how you feel, it's about how you conduct yourself despite how you feel. 6 months after the courthouse confrontation, I met my father for dinner at a quiet restaurant. These monthly meetings had become a tentative new tradition, each one slightly less awkward than the last. Alicia has been doing well in her therapy, he mentioned as we waited for dessert. She's holding down a job at the library, staying sober. That's good to hear, I said sincerely. While I wasn't ready to reconnect with Alicia, I didn't wish her ill. How are things with you? Better. He hesitated, then added, I've been seeing someone. A grief counselor. Should have done it 20 years ago after your mother died. This surprised me. My father had always dismissed therapy. What changed your mind? I asked. You, he said simply. Seeing you that day in court, so composed, so strong, even after everything that happened. It made me realize how much I've missed by holding on to the past. It wasn't a perfect relationship, too much water under the bridge for that. But it was honest in a way it had never been before. On the anniversary of my mother's death, I made a pilgrimage to her grave for the first time in years. I brought yellow roses, her favorite, and spent an hour sitting beside her headstone, telling her about my life, my achievements, my struggles. I wish you could have seen me take the bench, Mom, I whispered, tracing the letters of her name. But I felt you there somehow. One unexpected outcome of my personal journey was a new professional initiative. I started a mentoring program for young women from difficult family backgrounds interested in legal careers. Once a month, I invited high school and college students to the courthouse for workshops on law, professional development, and resilience. The law saved me, I told them during our first session. It gave me structure when my life lacked it, purpose when I felt lost, and, ultimately, a way to create justice when I had experienced injustice. Watching these young women find their voices and strengths became one of the most rewarding aspects of my life. Many came from situations far more challenging than mine, yet showed remarkable determination and courage. You're creating a legacy, Julia observed after sitting in on a workshop, something that will outlast any family drama. She was right. While I couldn't change my past, I could shape my future and potentially influence the futures of others. The cycle of dysfunction that had defined my family for generations had stopped with me. As I approach my 33rd birthday, I can look back on the past 2 years with a sense of hard-won peace. The young woman who once desperately sought her father's approval has been replaced by someone who understands that true validation comes from within. I recently added a single-family photo to my office. Not the staged portraits my father preferred, but a candid shot of my mother and me at the beach when I was about 9. We're both laughing, our hair wild from the wind. Genuine joy, captured in a fleeting moment. It reminds me daily of where I came from and how far I've traveled. The journey of healing is rarely linear. There are still days when old wounds feel fresh, when a casual comment or memory triggers the pain of rejection. But those moments no longer define me or dictate my responses. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about excusing harmful behavior. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of resentment. My cousin's attack at the courthouse door could have been just another painful chapter in our troubled family story. Instead, it became a turning point that ultimately led to greater understanding and peace. When she called me a filthy animal, and my father stood by watching, I thought it was my lowest moment. I couldn't have imagined that minutes later, sitting in the judge's seat, I would begin the process of reclaiming my narrative and redefining my worth. We don't get to choose our families or the wounds they inflict, but we do get to choose how we respond to those wounds. Whether we let them define us or use them as catalysts for growth. In taking the judge's seat that day, I wasn't just fulfilling a professional role. I was taking the seat of judgment in my own life, deciding what would hold weight and what would be dismissed. Have you ever had a moment when someone's attempt to humiliate you unexpectedly revealed your own strength? Thank you for listening to my journey. Take care.